Yolanda, are you up? I see your name.
I am Randy. I was trying to figure out how to unmute myself.
Yeah.
My home one is so different than my work one. So
Oh, okay.
hey,
Hi.
what am I doing?
Yeah, you're in the mountains. Your backdrop.
Yeah, I'm living the life, the leisure life.
All right. And so, yeah, we've got
Couple minutes, right?
there. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5. Holly's on.
We got 3 minutes.
Time hack. Yeah, we got 3 minutes. I do a TOT.
I was looking at that.
Yeah, that's fast.
And Holly's on, so we got it.
Yeah, so we got about 2 minutes left before we start. All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call to order today on the 13th of October. The Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority meeting is now in order. And our first item is to establish a quorum. And Jess, it looks like we have a quorum established. We do. We got that confirmed. Our next agenda item is going to be to approve today's agenda. And I call for a motion from our board.
Move approval of the agenda. John Graham.
Thank you, Mayor.
Second.
And we have a second.
Lojinos.
Commissioner Lojinos seconded, and there we go. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. The agenda for today is approved. All right, item number 3, public comment for the record for items not on the agenda. Jess, do we have anybody out there in teen land that?
Not that I know of, unless anybody wants to speak up now. We do have a few visitors online. So if you want to raise your hand or shout.
If
now.
you're online and want to make a public comment on items not on the agenda today, please, we'll start out, either do the yellow hand or go ahead and announce your name. I see none and I hear none from those online. Is that one person who just came up, Jess, or not?
They're muted, so I think we're
Okay.
good to go.
All right, anyone in our audience today?
Just one housekeeping comment. If you're out in Zoom, make sure to mute yourself when you're not speaking. If you're in the room, make sure to turn your microphone on to speak so that we can hear you. And then if you'll state your name when making any motions. Thank you.
Okay, with that, completes the public comment section of item 3. Item 4, approval of the minutes from our September 8th, 2021 meeting.
Yolanda,
hear-
move to approve.
I have a motion by Council Member Avila. Do I hear a second?
Holly,
Second.
second.
We have both Williams have seconded the motion. I think Wayne Williams was first, so we'll use his. Again, for all those in favor, state aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. So the minutes are approved. Item
This is Yolanda. I'm not able to hear if you guys are talking.
Yeah, that Yolanda, we lost our mics for a second. We're getting them plugged back in right now.
I
You
can
hear
hear
me?
you now.
Yes. Okay, we're back on. That was not you, that was us. All
Okay,
right, Jim, over to you.
Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. Like to go over our summary of our meeting last week. Good meeting. We make a recommendation for approval of the 7 contracts that the city will present to you today. As well as the one contract, the county. Make recommendations for approval of both of those requests. Also, we did discuss engineering cost estimates for Pprta 3 capital projects. I'd like to defer a lot of detail on that discussion until you get to your item 9B, where it might be more relevant to the discussion at the time. I will say that the CAC has deferred to the board for guidance on that item, so we do not have a recommendation for that item at this point. And then the other thing I'd like to point out is you'll see over the next month or two, we're having a turnover of some of our advisory committee members. So you'll see some requests come to you directly, and then we'll also be reaching out to some of the member governments for reappointment of their members. So you'll see that over the next couple of months. So other than that, I'm available for any questions.
Anybody out there in Team Zoom land have questions for Jim on the CAC monthly report? I don't see any, Jess, so help me if I miss one of those out there. So with that said, go ahead and stay up here, Jim, and we'll, it's a real pleasure to present some certificates of appreciation for 2 CAC members who are leaving us, Jean Bray and David Chestnut. And I don't see who's in the, no one. Yeah, no one in. So I'll read their certificates of appreciation into the record. And the first will be Jean Bray. The Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority wishes to acknowledge its deepest gratitude to Jean Bray for his invaluable contribution to the Pprta Citizens Advisory Committee, August 2015 through October 2021. Sign. All right. Thank you, Gene. I know you're not here, but thank you. And is anyone, well, actually, we want to get approval for the motion. I'll go ahead and read, now that I've read his, I'm asking for a motion to approve.
Ms. Wayne, I'll move approval.
Right here, second.
Carpenter, second.
We have a motion and we have approval. All in favor, state aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. The motion is approved. The presentation recognizing Gene Bray is in the record. And for our second CAC member who's leaving us, David Chestnut, before I read the proclamation, I will ask for a motion to approve for David Chestnut.
Yolanda, move to approve.
Thank you, Yolanda. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Carrie, for the second. And all in favor, state aye.
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 All opposed? None. And now I will read the proclamation. The Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority wishes to acknowledge its deepest gratitude to David Chestnut for his invaluable contribution to the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority Citizen Advisory Committee, April 2008 through September of 2021. Quite a long while. Signed, Randy Helms, Chair, Pprta Board of Directors. All right, so we'll make sure we get these to our two esteemed CAC members. I'll give those to you. Jim.
Okay.
You'll hand those over to you.
And if I may, go ahead.
We'll need a motion accepting the CAC's monthly report.
Oh, did we miss that? Yes. All right, request a motion to accept the Citizens Advisory Committee monthly report.
Move acceptance, John Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. Do I hear a second?
Second, Carrie Guyton.
Carrie, thank you. All in favor, state aye.
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 All opposed? There are none. Thank you, Jim. The monthly report has been accepted.
Okay, thank you. I would like just to, on behalf of the CAC, just say a couple words about Gene Bray and David Chestnut. Both of them have been with us for a while. They both brought very deep understanding of the process. The customer always had the public's interest in mind and have contributed significantly to the discussions and the recommendations that we brought to you over the years. And so both of these guys will really be missed. And we wish them the best. Gene is having to back away because of some health issues with his wife, and David commitment with work and some things that's just taken over and not allowed them to participate. So I just wanted to let you know that they will both be missed greatly. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Jim. Any other comments or anything on our two CAC members? All
This
right.
is Yolanda.
Go ahead, Yolanda.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say, we here at Pprta, but PPACG, the city, the county, we have these advisory boards who do the deep dive for us, and they volunteer. And so I really appreciate the outgoing members, but also the ones that are still supporting all of our efforts and doing that deep dive on their own time. So kudos to them, and I wish them both the very best.
Thank you very much. And those words are exactly right, for our citizens to volunteer and give their time and energy and effort to make what we know is just an outstanding organization. Thank you. All right, moving on with our next item, financial reports. Bev?
Good afternoon, Pprta board members. The August sales and use taxes were received yesterday, and we received $12,995,000 for the month, which was 645,000 above the amended budget, or 5.2%. So far this year, we are 5,773,000 above the amended budget. And on page 2, August receipts were 2,068,000 above last year August receipts, or 18.9%. So year to date, we're 18 million above last year, or 23.7%. Are there any questions?
Any questions from Zoom land?
I'll just say, good news, Bev, you're true to form.
Yeah.
Thank you. Doesn't have anything to do with me, but.
Oh, just
Yeah,
claim
yes,
it.
it does.
Okay, so then my second item is the 2022 budget. In your packet, you received the draft budget, and state law requires that the board receive the budget by October 15th. Next month, we will have our presentations, the workshop for both the CAC and the board. And I'm asking today for the board to set the public hearing date for December 8th, and I'll notice it in the paper.
So are there any concerns or issues with the 8th of December being the date that we do the public hearing? Anyone? Okay, I see none here. I see none online. And
Do we vote on this?
yes, we're getting ready to vote. Yep, that's what we're going to do.
So I move to approve setting the date for November 8th.
Thank you for the motion. Do I hear a second?
December 8th.
December 8th.
8th.
Oh, December 8th.
Commissioner Gonzalez seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. December the 8th has been set as the public hearing date.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Bev. Okay. Next is the 2021 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. Who's up first for that? Gail.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Gail Sertivant, City Engineer, Deputy
Mhm.
Public Works Director for the City of Colorado Springs. The city is pleased to bring 7 contracts for the board's consideration and approval today. And then at the end, I will be mentioning a letter of support we'll be asking the board for as well. The first contract is for the Barnes Road widening. It is a closeout change order. We're reconciling the final quantities for pyramid construction in the amount of $45,814.77. So this is the last anticipated change order. This project will be completed about $200,000 below the overall budget as shown in the CIP. The city's second contract is a new design contract for another A-list project. Is the El Paso Bridge over Fountain Creek tributary. This is our second to last A-list project contract to bring to you to get that work started. It's in the amount of $203,195.33 to Alfred Benish and Company. City's third contract is for the UPR Railroad or main line over Nevada and Tejon Bridge replacements. Is to cover the cost for railroad reviews. And there is an image of the bridges and the location map that is in the amount of $138,000 for the benefit reviews overseen by the BNSF Railroad. Our fourth contract is our on-call roadway drainage construction contracts. Where these are on-call task order based contracts. There will be 15 of them. The initial value is $0. And they have the amount to be awarded in up to $200 increments, an aggregate of $2 million, but that is all subject to appropriations for work that may be needed in support of roadway drainage projects in the future. Contract number 5 is for the Black Forest Road widening. As part of the property negotiations, We have identified a septic system that needs to be relocated from the property located at 6770 Foxtrot Lane. There is a location map included there. That is in the amount of $39,338 to Rhino Rock Designs. The sixth contract is also for Black Forest Road widening. It's change order number 9 for AECom to help us complete some legal descriptions and parcels to clean up that right of way along Black Forest Road. And that's the amount of $33,731 for AECom. The seventh and final contract for the board's consideration is for the North El Paso Street damage assessment. I'm sure you all heard on the news on August 26th, there was a crash that struck that El Paso Street Bridge that goes over Platte Avenue. The city, because Platte had to be closed at the time, plus that El Paso Bridge, we had to have a structural engineer come and do an initial assessment right away to make sure we could safely open Platte Avenue to traffic. And then we want to continue to retain that same structural engineering firm to help us with the further damage assessment and recommendations. The future recommendations for what happens for that bridge are also going to be considered in conjunction with the Platte Avenue corridor study. I will mention this amount for this is going to be included in an insurance claim filed against the driver's insurance company that struck that bridge. So we're putting the contract in place and we're anticipating being reimbursed for those costs through the insurance claim. And if you've got questions about the reimbursement, unfortunately, we've had to do this numerous times. Usually it's more often with guardrail, but the same process is going to happen with this bridge. So those are the 7 contracts for the board's consideration today. I will mention too, I'm going to be asking the board and in particular Chairman Helms to help us with a letter of support for a special highway committee or grant for bridges that's administered by Colorado Municipal League and county commissioners. What's the I stand for? Incorporated, is that right? CCI. And it's for the Water Street Bridge over Camp Creek Bridge replacement. I'm in the process of drafting that letter of support, but it's not ready to go as we're been a short timeline on that grant. But I wanted to mention that as well. And would be asking for the board's approval for the 7 contracts and for permission to work with Rick and Chairman Helms to get that letter of support signed.
Yes, Councilmember Williams.
I've got a question on item 7, Gail.
Yes.
So you're asking for 33K from the RTA and then saying that there will be a reimbursement potentially from a insurance company. So that what happens then when that insurance company pays the claim? Does that come back to the RTA?
Yes. So when we file those insurance claims, yes, that money comes back to the RTA. This would be paid for out of maintenance funds, which is very similar to we use for guardrail as well.
So let me ask, because I'm not sure. If we think there's going to be a repayment, why not simply do it out of the city rather than through the Pikes Peak RTA?
And this bridge was already under maintenance. So we already had an existing contract in place and we actually had maintenance work done on 2 days before it got hit.
Okay.
Go through and do that. And we actually were able to bring that contractor out to come and help us immediately there on the site. And the reality is we have more easier access with the maintenance funds than we would through a city account because we would have to go through a special appropriations at this point in time. And we have a process in place that we work with Bev on these routine maintenance items that involve crashes within the city.
Okay, thanks. Not seeing any other hands up, I would move approval of items 1 through 7.
Do I have a second?
Yolanda, second.
Thank you, Yolanda.
Does that
We have a-
include the letter?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I see none online. I see none here. All in favor for approving the 7 contracts, state aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
And then with respect
I
to
hear
the
none.
other item, you're seeking approval of a letter?
That PPRTA would provide a letter of support for the city's effort to attain a bridge grant for the Water Street Bridge over Camp Creek.
Okay.
Using PPRTA funds.
There's no draft of
There
that.
is no draft yet.
Okay.
And
So,
it was actually to have permission to continue to work with Rick and Chairman Helms to get that signed on the PPRTA board's behalf.
So I understand if we do a motion and approve it, it's to do two things. One, produce a letter and have the funds for a grant or seek a grant.
Right, we would be pairing emergency bridge program funds as the local match portion to go with the grant funds for this particular bridge if we're successful.
okay, so moved.
Second,
Yolanda, second.
thank you, Yolanda. We have a motion and a second for those two items. And do we want to have some more discussion on that? I hear none. I see none. All in favor, stay aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. The motion is approved. I'm happy to help. That takes care of Colorado Springs, El Paso County.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Board of Directors, Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County County Engineer.
Good
We have one
afternoon,
item
Jennifer.
for your consideration today. This is a contract amendment with our design engineer with HDR for the Highway 105 project. What we're asking for is a contract amendment to add approximately $2 million to that design effort. That will be doing additional design work on our Project A section. And so this project has a couple phases. And so we will be doing additional design effort on the section between approximately I-25 and Lake Woodmore. And then it would add final design. We've done preliminary design on the remainder of the project, and it would add final design for the next section, and that was between Lake Woodmore and Martingale Road. That there is significant adjacent properties and property acquisition adjacent to what we're calling Project B. And so there's a significant amount of value in there as far as for the property acquisition specialist that is part of that design team. So as you look at that dollar amount, there's significant effort expected because we do have a bunch of properties, residential properties adjacent to that road. Happy to answer any questions, and we would ask for an approval of that contract amendment.
Holly Williams, I would move approval.
Thank you, Holly. Second,
Second, Gonzalez.
Commissioner Gonzalez seconds. And any discussion? I hear none. I see none. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. The motion has been approved.
Thank you.
County's approved. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, next is item 7, 2021 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts, City of Colorado Springs.
Greg, I think that's you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and
Good
board- and
afternoon.
honorable board members. I'm Craig Blewett, Transit Services Manager
Craig,
with the
please.
city. Our report is in your packet. Just like to highlight a few items. For our local fixed route bus service, ridership in August 2021 showed an increase of 20% as compared to the previous August 2020. But it is a decrease still compared to pre-pandemic levels that were shown in August of 2019 by 40%. So we've been pretty steady at 60% of pre-COVID levels for the past 3 months or so. Their ADA paratransit service, we transported about 8,600 passengers in August 2021. Amounts to an increase of 63% compared to August 2020, but again, it's about 35% lower than pre-pandemic levels in August of 2019. And an important point, and I'll talk about our driver shortage here in a minute, but our driver shortage has not impacted our ADA service at all. We still provide every ride that's requested with ADA. Van pool program, we operated 8 vans during August 2021. 12 routes are currently suspended due to COVID-19. There were 40 active riders who made 880 one-way trips in August. That's an increase of 33% compared to 2020, but again, decrease of 78% compared to August of 2019. Just a couple additional comments on our driver shortage issues. It's gotten some recent media coverage. As you know, we contract all of our operations out to private companies. All bus drivers are employees of those private companies. The company responsible for fixed route is responsible to provide drivers and that are needed to meet our contract requirements. So we are working very closely with our contractor, fixed route contractor, on their efforts to address the driver shortage, and all options to solve that problem are on the table. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
What do Greg, do you have any signals or signs or for the driver situation improving in the near future? I know you said it's with the contractors.
Sure. Yeah, well, we have drivers in training currently. It takes about 6 weeks to get through the training process. Based on the number we have in training, we do expect to be able to restore some service over the next 30 days. We don't have a specific timeline to fully restore service, but we're going to keep adding service back as we get drivers.
All right, thank you. Other questions, both out in Teams Zoom land?
This is Yolanda. Yeah, so, we've gotten a lot of funding through the CARES Act initially, now through ARPA. And yes, we have contracts for the fixed routes and paratransit. So I'm just wondering if if that money has trickled down to the contractors so that they have more money to either raise the driver salaries or to make things better, because frankly, I know we've been told that the drivers are being abused a lot, when they're asking people to put their mask on or whatever, when because of the shortages, and people are frustrated because we're not on, like 15-minute frequencies anymore, except for I think the one that goes downtown to the Citadel. So is that money being held by MMT, or is it going down to compensate and to make sure that that money goes all the way to the contractors so the contractors have more to work with?
So yes, so the funding that we received through the CARES Act was used basically to save Pprta funding. So that funding is in reserve and is available to help address the driver shortage problem. We do have a proposal in hand from our contractor that we're currently reviewing. Any additional costs associated with that proposal can be accommodated with that funding.
So they just need to ask for it. I know there's contrary thought about, we are in a very auto-centric city, county, whatever. And I think that transit is just so incredibly important. And we were on the way to, am I off? Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, it's something weird happened. But I think we were on a trajectory to, implement more fixed routes, and, we have the airport now and stuff, but we still need to look at the different ways of transportation and not rely so much on our automobiles, even though it's like the most convenient for a lot of people, not people like me who, rely a lot on public transportation, but it'd be good when that becomes a choice. And it's really important to look at all modes of transportation and not rely so heavily on automobiles, not only for us and cost of living and quality of life, but to protect our environment. So thank you.
Well,
Sorry
well,
for
thank
that
you-
editorial, but had to say it. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for those comments. And I will just say that for all of us at MMT, it really breaks our heart to not be able to provide the service that we have the funding for. And we are looking to grow as well. So we really do need to address this driver shortage issue and be able to proceed.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Okay, we have to approve it. So do I hear a motion for the 2021 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts that we just heard for Colorado Springs?
Yolanda, move to approve.
Thank you. And I think we had a second from Commissioner Gonzalez. Oh, sorry.
Not really hearing someone.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I jumped ahead there. Okay, next, we have. Is it? Yeah, Pprta Matrix 3. Who want the Rick? No, who's going to lead us off on there? Jennifer. So,
Mr. Chair, this is Gail Sturdivant again. Just to recap, when the board met on September 8th, you made decisions on items 7, 13, 15, 16, and 17. And the results of that discussion are documented in the minutes. The remaining item is item number 14 as it relates to the maintenance of effort. Staff recommended that the maintenance of effort language and policy 11 remain as is, and the CAC disagreed with that, as you can see documented in the minutes. They recommended that the baseline year for the maintenance of effort be reset, potentially the year 2019. And this is a topic that I don't believe the board has discussed yet. I will also mention, not on the matrix, but I believe PPRT staff is working on it. There was a discussion to develop a definition and policy on what completely funded meant, and I believe that's pending outside of the discussion of this matrix.
okay, let's go ahead and open up the floor for. Let's get some good discussion on this. So,
Yolanda.
yeah, go ahead, Yolanda. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
This is something I've always been concerned about is, the maintenance efforts and what we're using. And it does make sense that the CAC would want to move it. And it does for me too. I mean, 2004, what was the cost of living then, inflation? And that hasn't been brought up. And I do think it would be a good, that we need to bring it up to the times now, that not just keep falling back and back and back to where we just don't give to the maintenance of effort. I mean, we have to maintain what we have already. And so I would be very, what is that? I think it'd be good to look at 2019 as a baseline.
So let's open this up here and look at the pros and cons of that. Clearly, 2004 was, obviously quite a while ago. Yes.
Yes, first, why 2019?
I think that's a good question for the
Yeah, Jim.
CAC.
No, I mean, I'm looking at the
2021 would be
CAC,
nice.
sorry.
So.
Well,
Uh,
yeah.
Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. We had a long discussion on this, and I don't remember, I don't have my notes with me. I apologize, but it wasn't a unanimous decision. I think in general, they wanted to get something that was a little more representative of the cost of living and the cost now versus then. As many of you know, during the recession, the city combined many departments, eliminated some things. It would be very difficult, my understanding is very difficult to do an apples to apples comparison of the departments and the budgets and stuff now as opposed to where they existed in 2004. But the consensus was that we should update that to a little more modern number that represents the amount of money that people are spending. We did discuss that And Gail brought up the fact that 2C is now involved and is considered maintenance, and that's it. So you'd have to, if that didn't get funded again and was included in a number, you would either have to exclude it now from those maintenance costs. And that, so there were some caveats, but the general consensus was move it up to something more current. And there's downside for smaller smaller members too, that their budget really hasn't, maintenance budget really hasn't increased and changed since that 2004. So they've actually got less buying power for the dollars they have in maintenance now than they did in 2004. So there was some pros and cons and a lot of discussion.
So let me ask some follow-up questions. A large part of what the city spends on maintenance right now is voter approved 2C expenditures, which are limited in duration. Explicitly, and I don't know what portion of, but it's, I think, significantly more than the general fund by a lot. So twice as much, Gail saying. So I guess I don't fully understand what the recommendation is. And my other concern, and I've expressed this before when we did discuss this before, is you are therefore disincentivizing municipalities in the county from directing funds to transportation that might be one-time funds or short-term funds or funds during a good year, because now we're going to come in and say some random year picked when the economy was going well, we're going to say you need to always be at this level. And so I'm concerned about a number of the implications from this recommendation, particularly since the city is artificially high because of 2C. And second, because that was a great economic year. It's one of the last years of the Trump administration thing, and it's pre-COVID, so things were going very well economically. And to say then that we're always going to have to spend however much we spent in that particular year, I have concerns about that. And so that's where I'm at. There is absolutely nothing in the RTA establishing language that stops the municipality or stops the county from doing more when they can. And in fact, certainly the city has been, particularly with 2C. Both entities have had ballot issues at various times that have provided additional money, or commissioner or council member or trustee decisions, depending on what the entity's arrangement is. But to go in and adjust that and pick a high water mark, I think has some risks.
Can I ask, is it 2016 that 2C passed, or was it 2015?
I think it was 2015.
I think it was.
It went into effect though in January of 2016.
Okay, thank you. Because one year that you could consider as a base year would be 2015 then. And I can pull up what that year is. So the 2019 year, the city was at 35.8 million and the county was at 18.3 million for their maintenance of effort budgets.
Microphone's on, so for the record, state your name.
All right, sir. My name is Richard Robertson. I'm a member of the El Paso County HAC and of course the CAC for the Pprta. And I've been attending your meetings primarily because of my policy background, and the matrix is, I think, the most important thing, certainly one of the most important things you all will address. And you have, I think the CAC and the board have addressed this very well. I think the two most important things Well, the first most important thing, I'll make it three things. One, that was that you created the Pprta. It is a wonderful organization. I wish we had that across the country in every state and most major metropolitan areas and some of the rural ones. And you did an excellent job in the details. The two most important details within the Pprta, one is the listing of projects that you commit to the citizens that you are going to build and maintain. I applaud that above all. And you have done a very good job and your revisions are good. One can always debate small points within, but that is the key to getting voter approval. And my main objective is to see that the Pprta is continued well beyond my lifetime. The second most important point within the Pprta, I believe, is some sort of maintenance of effort agreement. And you put that in 2004 in the first one, and that was done well. And I think Commissioner Williams, you were probably a member at that time and helped put that in. When the issue came before the CAC, and I want to thank our chair because he made a very fine presentation just a few minutes ago. The vote was 9-4 in favor of modifying the cap, the figure to bring the maintenance of effort to 2019. Now we chose that year because we did not want to go into the pandemic years of 20 or 21 because there was too much new money coming in because of the national change that brought places like Amazon.com to start paying taxes. So that's why we chose 2019. Now, I didn't know before that there was, as Mr. Williams has pointed out, you all in the city have a, I think maybe it's a 1 cent sales tax, something like that, that you created around 2014. We did not know that when we took that vote. We might have at that time recommended to make it the year before those revenues came in. And I would suggest that that is one option that should be considered. The bad thing about leaving this at 2004 is this. The approximate cost of living, value of the dollar from 2004 to 2019 is in the range of 35%. The same thing costs 35% more in 2019 than it did in 2004. If some group gets organized and tries to kill this organization and they bring that particular point out, it's not going to be helpful to you. And gentlemen and ladies, I appreciate speaking before you. It's the only time I will. And I thank you for your consideration. And I'll try to answer any question if you wish to ask.
Any questions out there?
I just have a comment. Thank you so much, this is Yolanda, for that explanation. And I think about our salary as in city council is like 6,250. And if we at least had tied that to the rate of inflation, we'd be now at 48,000 a year. And so to say that it's going to put this burden, number one, 2C is sunsets every 5 years. And we don't know that that's going to be if the voters will approve that every 5 years. We don't know that. And it's like keeping salaries stagnant at, 10 bucks an hour when everything, I mean, people can't get into affordable housing, and you can't look at something just in a linear in just one area. This translates to life and quality of life broadly. And to leave the maintenance effort, and I'm concerned about, and the maintenance effort for this 2C doesn't include transit as this would. So I don't know why we're fighting about being equitable and bringing us to the times. And I think if they had chosen, the CAC had recommended 2021, there we have probably not a reality of the money that's coming in because of all the CARES Act and the ARPA money. But I think it's really fair. And just like with the mayor and how we chose 2019 for the having to do with Tabor and the retention. And so it just makes perfect sense in an equitable way to move the date that was recommended by the CAC to 2019. And to really make this a fair and continue the maintenance, and that doesn't decrease as the cost of living and everything is decreasing. So we have just very, very few dollars to work on it.
Thank you, Yolanda. Director Wayne Williams. Oh, go ahead.
Thank
Director
you.
Gonzalez.
Yeah, so I think it might be a good idea to update this. I think we do want the trust and the transparency for the public, and that's always helpful on these votes. However, with the discussion of the 2C, I kind of like Holly's recommendation that perhaps 2015 be the one we use, so that's not hasn't changed the actual values when you've added an extra tax that I think again may not be approved in the future. So, but in general, I kind of like the idea of updating it, but perhaps the 2015, as Holly highlighted and the gentleman just highlighted as a rationale why 2015 may be the better year.
Thank you. Director Wayne Williams.
I did want to clarify that first, the maintenance of effort does apply to transit. It's not just maintenance. Although the city failed to meet that standard for a number of years prior to the time that I was on council. I think what we need to do is get the actual numbers from each of the entities for that period and get input from the respective city and county managers as to whether they think that's doable. And so I know for most of the entities on the board, there is someone that they would probably want to confer with at their town, city, or county to say, is this a level of funding that you think we can meet? Because I don't want to do something that winds up being a bunch of zeros. Fail to comply, because I don't think that helps us going forward. With respect to the initial concept, what we wanted to convey is that we would not be replacing existing maintenance budgets with the Pikes Peak RTA, and we have not. If we want to go forward with a higher level, then I think we need to know what that is and what the entities think. So I don't think we ought to make a decision on this today until we actually look at that 2015 number from the respective entities. Because I don't know what one-time events there may have been at that time that may skew things.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Irvin. I appreciate that. And I think if the board does want to reconsider that, that's something that we would ask for. I would just mention from the county standpoint, you know, statutorily, from a county standpoint, we are restricted from a road and bridge budget of what can go in and what can go out of that budget. So from that standpoint, it's very, we don't have a lot of leeway in regards to that. It is a restricted budget item. The other thing is that we are Tabor restricted, so that has in the timeframe of this has restricted the county's budget. So I do appreciate the time to be able to get our finance folks more involved and to take a look at that.
Thank you. And everything you just said, the last several comments, I actually agree with totally. Before we would want to make any kind of decision like that, I would want to be sure that we, the general fund of our different government entities here wouldn't be harmed by doing this. And we don't know that without knowing the numbers. I'd also like, I think Travis Easton from the city of Colorado Springs would like to make a couple of comments. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Just a point of clarification. Currently, we do not include 2C in our annual maintenance of effort calculation. So just want to make sure we understood that. And the transit calculation is separate from the transportation. That's 5.7 million. Our annual transportation is roughly 20 million. So just to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Would you mind making any comments on if we did go from 2004 up to whatever year,
Well,
the particular risk that would be there?
selfishly, I'd be happy with that. I'm always happy to put more money into transportation, but that is just being selfish. So I would want to go back to Shorey and our folks in the budget office and really look at 2015 if that's a number, and and see if that really makes sense and what are some of the pitfalls or things to consider.
Okay, so thank you, Travis.
Wait, I need
Wow.
clarification.
Yeah.
So Travis, did you say that maintenance of effort is not included in 2C at all anyway?
2C has a separate maintenance of effort. So that is roughly $2.7 million. What I was saying is specific to Pprta, the city has a maintenance of effort for transportation and a separate maintenance of effort for transit. Two separate numbers, two separate calculations done each year.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, where do we stand with this then? Do we need a motion to move forward, or do we ask? Yes, Rick, go ahead.
Motion to direct the Pprta staff to refer this question out to the 5-member governments for response in time for the November cycle of CAC and board.
So moved.
Second.
That's why we have Rick here. Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this particular issue? All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. That motion has been approved. So we just gave work to our staffs. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
ahead,
there is
Gail.
one other item. I
Yes.
apologize. I
No.
mentioned that the board had made a decision on item 16 previously. As it turns out, the board only made a decision on the board makeup under item 16. And there still needs to be discussion if the CAC makeup needs to change if additional member governments were to join Pprta.
Okay, do we need Jim back up here for that?
So while he's coming up, we can certainly have discussion now, but since we're going to hear back on this maintenance of effort 2015 issue, since that carries over to the November cycle, the CAC membership with the addition of new smaller entities could also move over to next month, but encourage discussion this today.
So right now we have, what do we have, 17 and 21 total, counting the alternates, correct?
Yeah, so we have 21 members. Rick,
It's 3 city via CTAB, 3 county via the Highway Advisory Committee, and then 2 each, Manitou, Green Mountain Falls, Rama, and then 5 at-large regular and 4 at-large alternates for a total of 17 voting seats, but 21 members with the 4 alternates.
And just for clarity, the alternates participate in the conversations, but depending on the regular CAC members, the number of CAC members we have, they don't vote, or their votes don't count unless they're filling in for a regular CAC member. So just for some that may not have been familiar with how that works. And they, on a rotating basis, so every meeting based on our quorum and who's there, Rick mentions which alternate members, at-large alternates, can vote. So, yes, sir.
This is before we get to the membership, between you and Reb, blanking here for a second. Between you and Reb, you've been there for a really long time. Sorry, it's true. So talk to me, we'll address composition. For me, the first question is size, and then we look at composition. So is this the right size? Is it too many for that it becomes unwieldy? Is it too few where you don't get enough viewpoints expressed? Talk to me a little bit about what your thoughts are on the size of the group.
My experience, the size, I think, is not an issue. Everyone gets an opportunity to express their view on things, and there's I think, a fantastic dialogue between the members of the group, point, counterpoint, and in some cases, the discussion changes the minds of other people as we gain information, like any group would. And so I don't see size as an issue. I think that we rarely have 100% of all members there. So by having that group, and the alternates, it allows us to make sure we've got a quorum and a good cross section. I think the quality of the membership, the makeup and their backgrounds add to that. If you have a smaller group, you get a less diverse background, diverse opinions on things. And so I don't see size as an issue.
Commissioner Williams here, what I might recommend is, since the recommendation on the Board of Directors membership was to maintain the same ratio, maybe we would want to go then, and this is going to be larger, to 4, 4, 2, 2, 2, and 2. So that's 24. No, 4 and 4, that's 16, and then 5 at large. So that's 21 members with 4 alternates.
So you'd add 1 to the city and county, and then 2 additional for Calhan.
And that still keeps the 1/3 ratio going.
How big are CTAB and HAC?
I think HAC might have 7 members. What do you think, Jen?
I do not know.
No, I'm looking at the transportation people from the respective entities.
They're running their numbers over there.
I know that we are short 5 or 6 people on CTAB right now, so that's why I'm looking it up, because we're also changing the makeup of that organization.
Go ahead, Rick.
Another option to throw in the mix is you could consider reducing the at-large alternates by 1, and or reduce the at-large regulars by 1. Just something to chew on.
Instead of increasing the city, Colorado Springs, and the county, and then the other.
Not instead of, just something else to think about.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. On our Highway Advisory Commission, we have 9 members. 5 of those represent each of the county commissioners' districts, with The remaining members are at large, and then we do have associate members as well. So 9 from the hack. I mean, 9 total that are advisory hack.
So would it be onerous if one more hack and one more CTEB members were asked to join the PPRT CAC?
That's actually something I'd like to take back to CTAB and really get their opinion, because as I
Right.
mentioned, CTAB, we used to also have ATAC as separate entities, and there's actually an ordinance that's going to be going through city council in the near future to really combine those into one organization. So as of right now, there's 7 CTAB members and there's 8 ATAC members, but the makeup's going to be completely different. So I can't tell you the answer to that. It's a little crazy. And I know there are 5 or 6 vacancies right now. So right now, I'd say, so we have 3 coming. 4 may not be a big stretch, but I think you would have more cases where you'd be relying on your alternate members for the CAC.
Certainly the second and third order effects of all this are starting to play out now.
Yeah, right now in your ratio, you've got 6 from the smaller entities. Right? And 6 from the larger entities.
Yes.
And if we don't do anything, there would be 8 from the smaller entities and 6 from the city and county combined, which does seem
off
a little bit. But my good friends in Rama, Calhoun, Green Mountain, and Manitou would have more votes than the entire city of Colorado Springs and El Paso County. Not saying it has to be the same ratio, because obviously we didn't create it with the same ratio. But I do think, and part of this is this is, Jennifer, is the membership in the establishing IGA.
No, it's set in the bylaws.
Okay, so
it's
we
controlled by
have,
this board.
so we have the ability to change that
ourselves
At this board level.
at this board, which means we don't need to get it in the IGA, but I kind of like Commissioner Williams's suggestion, but I'd like to get the input. So I would move that we refer this out to the entities for their input.
Same thing.
Yep.
Okay, we have a similar motion to move it to the different government entities for their consideration. Do I hear a second?
I'll second. Carrie Geithner.
Thank you, Commissioner Geithner. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I see none out there in Zoom land and I see none in here. So we'll take the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none. That motion has now been approved for Gail and Jennifer, and we keep kicking this can down the road, but that's okay because it gets a little more, we understand it a little bit more and are able to see a little bit better the second and third order effects of what we're doing. Gail, anything else on the Matrix 3?
No, Mr. Chair, that covers the 2 remaining items there. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much for that. That was really good. Okay, where are we at in 8 Charlie, Colorado Springs monthly change order and property acquisition report?
Mr. Chair, the Scale Stewart event again. The city's change order log and property acquisition log is available in your packets and available if there are questions.
Okay, any discussion out there? This is for information. Anything online? I see nothing, Jess, so I don't see anyone out there. See nothing here. All right. I consider that one closed. 8 Delta, El Paso County monthly change order. Jennifer.
Mr. Chair, Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County County Engineer. Similarly, this is an informational item. It's in your packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'll give everybody a moment to get to it and take another quick look at it. Any discussion online? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone up here. Do we need another minute or two, a minute or?
It looks good to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Holly. Okay, with that said, no further discussion. 8 Delta is closed. Item number 9, administrative actions and reports. Okay, composition of board and board member voting. Yes, Rick. Oh,
That's okay.
sorry about that, Jennifer.
Yeah, so pursuant to our discussion at the last board meeting, I went ahead and drafted the proposed language to make the 4th amended and restated establishing IGA. Circulated that to your staff, had got some comments from Rick and improved upon the language a little bit. And then circulated that to the attorneys for the various member governments to see if they had any comments or revisions, of which they had none other than some very minor clarifications on the signature pages and such. So you see in your packet today, a redlined version showing the changes made to the currently in effect 3rd amended and restated agreement. These changes, the bulk of them are on 6.15, and this just maintains the 3-3-3 voting structure as we have it now. It is forward-looking, so it's not specific to the addition of 1 member. It would apply for the addition of multiple members going forward, such that the voting power of the smaller members would be 3 divided by the number of those total members. So in the example of just Callahan joining, that's 0.75 votes per smaller member representative, with a full vote retained for the larger member representatives from the county and the city. So today's action item, if the board is so inclined, would be to follow our past precedent, which has been that the RTA refers this out to the member governments and asks them to take it to their governing bodies for approval. So we would be asking for that direction today. And we discussed in the earlier lunch meeting, prep meeting, I think the request would be to have this in place by January 1st, assuming that Callahan would be coming on board at that time, so that we have the new voting structure in place by January 1st. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, I'll call, yes, Commissioner Gonzalez.
I don't have any questions, but I like this plan.
So before we discuss it, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve as written, as the changes have been made.
Yeah, so the motion today would be to refer this, direct me to refer this out to the member governments for approval by January 1st by their governing bodies.
So I'm looking for a motion.
So moved. Longo's.
Second?
Hungry.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a motion and a second discussion. So we're looking forward to sending it out to the government entities and having it approved by 1st of January. Okay, it sounds like we're in agreement.
And I don't, did we get the all in favor? We have a
I
motion and a
haven't,
second.
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I was just looking for any further discussion or anything. All right. I don't see any online further discussion. None. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. The motion has passed, Jennifer. Okay, that's 9 Bravo. Engineering cost estimates for Pprta Matrix 3 capital projects. So Jim is up, brought Jim up to the table for that. And this is where I'm wondering if we should take a break, or this is going to be a little bit of a lengthy discussion. Let's go ahead and get started. Jim and Rick. Rick, did you want to say something beforehand?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I could
Yes.
give the intro on this and a
Yep.
little background. Several years ago, the board decided that it wanted better cost estimates for the future PPRTA 3 capital projects. And directed, after consulting with PPRTA attorney Jennifer Ivey, directed that since the only admin funds could be used to have contracts with engineering consultants to do these, since it couldn't come out of the PPRTA 2 capital, it could only be admin money. Then the board directed Beverly to start setting aside the unused admin money each year that normally goes back into the pot and then goes 55, 35, 10 to the 5-member governments. But she set that unused admin money aside for 3 or 4 years. It now is in a reserve for this purpose and has a little over $1 million in it. So since the city staff, engineering staff has the knowledge of hiring and engineering firms, I asked Gail Sturtevant to offer me the ingredients for the process to implement the concept that the board approved 3 or 4 years ago. She gave me some elements of the process, and that's in the memo. She would, their team has shortlisted the firms for this purpose. They would offer that shortlist to me. Then she would select the firms and match them up with the capital projects and decide on the fee per firm per contract to do 10 or 20 cost estimates of 10 or 20 capital projects. And the statement of work would ask each firm to develop a cost estimate on their respective assigned capital projects using a 0 to 2% design percentage, with the cost estimate expected to be in the range of a minus 50% to plus 100% for projects that would be begun to be designed in 2025 and 2026 and beyond, but also to use a 3% annual inflation rate from today until 2025. Firms would provide monthly progress reports with their monthly invoices, and then those progress reports and invoices would go through Gail and her team, come to me, and then PPRTA would pay the engineering firms for their work. Gail has stated that she expects that these cost estimates through the firms would be delivered by April 1st of 2022. So that could then be used in formulating the capital project lists for the upcoming November 22 ballot.
Thank you, Rick. Let's see. Want to go to Jim now, or does Gail want? Do you want to?
What
Jim.
I had deferred any details on
Right.
this from the CAC report, so I wanted to, if I may, again, Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. The CAC made a recommendation to the board to defer from the CAC, waiting on some more guidance. And I'm just going to cover some of the discussion. We had an in-depth, long discussion on this at the meeting. We're not sure that what was presented was the intent of the board when they approved the concept. And the concept, as we understood it, was to validate cost estimates for the projects going into the RTA 3 list. And at the time the concept was approved, we didn't have any implementing details or specifics on what to do with that. This memo provided us the details, And we felt like that instead of validating cost estimates, we're actually using that money to develop the cost estimates themselves versus validate. So we didn't feel like that was in the original consent. The other thing that drew a lot of concern, and Gail did, and the staff did confirm this was, I guess, standard practice within the engineering community, but you got 150% margin of error on a project. And from a minus 50% to a plus 100%. And it was only going to be from a 0 to a 2% design effort. And so when we look at those paying $1 million to develop cost estimates to up to a 2% design effort with that much of a margin of error, we didn't feel like that maybe that $1 million could be spent on a project versus spending it developing cost estimates. And what was the other one? Even with the escalation cause it was in there on the 3%. I'm introducing my opinion right here. This is my opinion versus just a CAC on that. If you look at a 2% design project, it will change by the time you get to 90 or 100% design. I mean, and so I'm not sure what the $1 million we were going to do with that other than and if you're using this not WAG, the 150% range of error there, why couldn't the city engineering staff do that versus paying someone, a contractor, to do that? So then, like I said, the biggest thing was the purpose and whether this implementing strategy it was presented to us met the intent of the board's thing to begin with. So it's kind of.
Director Williams.
Thanks. Absolutely, it meets the intent. I mean, you can't validate something unless you actually do something. And so the idea was that we would actually have legitimate cost estimates to go with. And the only way you can do that is by developing them. And so, you know, in terms of, is this better to design ahead or wait? For me, you're going to have to design it at some point. And so this is, you know, if all the entities choose to do that with their proportionate share, and they can do it however they want to get on their proportionate shares. But the only way you're going to get estimates for the projects is to begin the design process. And whether you do that now or do that 8 years later, you're still going to have to begin that design process. And so the issue is whether you do some of it now, albeit a small part, or just throw in numbers, which is what Pikes Peak RTA 2 did. And it is not something that is, it's not a throwaway design because you have to begin somewhere. And the question is, how far do you go with the money available? If you can go farther, great. Maybe it's a fairly simple design project. Certainly we've had some significant changes in processes, but what I don't want us to do is what we did this time, where you've got projects started where you don't even know where the right of way and where the utilities lines are and where, you know, will you still learn some things as you dig in and find out, oh, someone buried a bunch of tires here 100 years ago? Sure. But the issue is whether we do it at the 0% level, which is what we did last time, or whether we begin those design processes so we have some legitimate basis for figuring it out. And I think we ought to be coming forward with more realistic estimates. Are they still going to have some variation? Sure. I wouldn't purport to say they won't. But if you contrast Pikes Peak RTA 2 from Pikes Peak RTA 1, Pikes Peak RTA 1, we had begun design processes ahead of time. And we had a better understanding of where we were, and we better understanding of how much those projects were going to cost. And so you didn't have the wild skews to the extent you did with RTA 2. And I think it's a more responsible way to do it. And you're going to have to design them at some point, and so you might as well begin them so we have at least some realistic cost estimates. And that's may not be as critical if your project is pavement overlays in Rama, because you overlay as much money as you got. When you run out, you're done. That's a different thing when you're talking about bridge replacements and intersection improvements or road expansions or entire streetscapes like occurred along Colorado. So at least from my perspective, this is what I meant when I began to push for us to do that. Because there's nothing to validate until you actually do the work. And paying someone to validate someone else's work, we're not at that stage, but we got to do the work. And so that design is actually what at least my intention in pushing for us to get better estimates. And yeah, will some things change as we go forward? Yes, but the only way we're going to have better estimates is if we begin the design process. So that's my response.
That's fine. Yes, Brett. Come on up to the microphone.
I like the idea of better.
Go ahead and
cost-
speak into the microphone. So it's
My name's Red Williams, Vice Chair of the CAC. I respect your wish for, quote, a better estimate, but I don't see why you have to pay somebody, a consultant to do it, and you can't just use your own engineers. You conceive a project for the sake of discussion. We'll take West Colorado. I happen to know they had a lot of overruns. But what degree does another engineer? You've got well, I consider them good engineers. The county's got a great engineering. They put together an idea that you, i.e. the commissioners or the city council, come up with an idea that they want this project. You guys put together, the engineers put together this cost estimate, and okay, we can fit this in. Let's do a little of this, little of that, and reduce the cost because we want to put the project in, and you're going to have $100 to work with, and we've got to keep it under a total of $100 for 8 projects. The engineers can do that on a rough estimate. No, not on a, damn sure not on a 0 to 2%. So I don't see the point of paying somebody else approximately $1,300,000, and my numbers are from bed. I don't understand why you're paying them $1,300,000 to be checked.
It's not to be checked, Reb. It's to actually do the work. That's what we're talking
I
about.
understand, but why some other firm? Because basically you want somebody other than the city engineers. You're going to have an engineering firm check to see, and with a range.
No, we're going to have an engineering firm begin the design process, not check. You keep saying check. That's not what we're talking
To
about.
validate, yeah.
No, not to validate, to do.
They're going to do the estimate.
They're going to do the design.
All the
And
way
that's
through.
from where it is right now, which in many cases is nothing, to the 2% approximate level. There are
So how
not
do
the
you-
resources in either the city, and at least from my understanding about where the county's been on some other areas at the county, and maybe if Jennifer says, oh yeah, I can design all these projects in the next couple months, then great. But there's not, at least at the city, to do the necessary level of design, the site inspections, the planning for what's necessary, Rev.
So what is your purpose, once you've got that preliminary, how are you going to choose that engineering firm?
the same way the city and county always choose engineering firms. They've both got processes for this. It's not, we're always,
So you-
virtually every Pikes Peak RTA capital project has had an engineering firm selected for the design. I maybe there's one, maybe the county is starting to do them all internally. That would be different than my knowledge over the last 20 years.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thanks. So on part one, I have no problems using the population distribution of funds. But good idea. Okay, like that. I agree with Breb. I don't think that was the intent from what I thought. Spending $1 million to get a cost estimate is what I thought was more of a review. I think we're about to hire 6 new engineers. So I got no problem splitting a couple of those guys to give us some estimates if that happens, to get us some cost estimates, because I don't think we should be spending $1 million. I didn't think it'd be that expensive. So, you know, I didn't think it'd be pre-engineering. I thought it would be a cost estimates, but if that's the plan, okay. But I think we could better use $500,000 of that to something else.
This is Commissioner Williams. I will say, you know, even if the county's hiring 6 engineers, are we going to be able to get 6 engineers? There's just so much competition out there to get someone at, you know, the level we need. There's so much work out there that it's better for most of the engineers to be working in the private sector. So now that I read through the proposal, I would tend to agree with the proposal to go ahead and hire out these cost estimates so that we can get them done. And it doesn't slow down other projects that I know the county engineer is working on now. So
Jim, go ahead.
And again, it's not the cost estimates, it's the design that have a cost estimate associated with them.
So what the CAC would look for from the board is guidance and what do you want us to do with this procedure that was outlined by the city in terms of doing that? Because that was kind of what we were looking for, was some guidance from you on what you wanted us to do. If this met the intent, and I believe it does, and what you say, that's fine, we can take that back. What would you like for us to do next? Do you want us to validate this? Do you just want to go ahead and do it yourselves now? What would you like for us to do?
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Sorry, I just wanted to add a little bit of clarity, because I think there's kind of become some confusion between the CAC's request and what you're now, like what you're articulating now. When this question first came to me, I think the overarching question was that this was articulated 3 or 4 years ago by Councilmember Williams as this idea of we need to get better cost estimating. And everyone thought that was a great idea, but there wasn't a lot of meat on those bones. So from a staff level perspective, when I started drafting the contract, I started asking questions like, how much control does this board want over the process? What's the max dollar amount? What's the timeline? And so by those questions being asked, I think it brought to light that there wasn't a lot of board level discussion. So I don't know that the board is asking the CAC something right now as much as we're asking the board for some direction. And I think that may go back to the CAC.
With respect to the valuable role the CAC serves, we need these estimates in about 6 months in order to put this, or less, to get it together. So going back and forth, I think as Commissioner Gonzalez said, the allocating it between the entities in proportion to the population makes sense. And I would treat that as the normal process for a design contract, which is what we do all the time here. And, you know, if Rama's got a town engineer I don't know about who wants to design this, I'm all for it. It's Jennifer Irvine is the town engineer. So I appreciate the input and raising the question, but I think at this stage, if we're going to get these designs done so we can do the project list and put that together for spring, summer, is when we're talking about putting it on, getting it ready for a ballot.
Yeah, we need them ready by April, as I understand it.
Yeah, we need to get going on them.
So
Go ahead, Gail.
Oh, I was just gonna add, Rick did a nice job summarizing a lot of data that he and I have shared back and forth in his memo. But what you may not realize is we've actually worked with Jennifer Ivy on a detailed contract and statement of work and examples of exact deliverables, at least that the city would like to receive from these. Plus, we've also gone through the on-call selection process of pre-qualification of engineering firms and given that short list to Rick to start soliciting help for this activity. And we would like to get those firms engaged as quickly as possible. Because yes, even though the list probably won't be close to being finalized till April, we really need more information on the cost of continued planning.
And I don't know where the other entities are, but we'd certainly be willing to share that list of deliverables and other things. And it sounds like the county and city are already working together on it. So great. But for the other entities, I don't know where Manitou, Green Mountain are. And Braymount.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, so I guess just a clarification, that some of the questions that I was asking in the comment bubbles that were going back and forth was just, was it the board's intent that the full 1 point, whatever the figure is, somebody can insert the number, is that full dollar value supposed to be divided by the population numbers, which seems to be a way that makes sense. And then a contract for each of those will be let. It was questions like that. Was that the board's intent? When do we bring it? So we're close. We're not, we have a contract form. The city's looked at it. I'm satisfied with it. It was just those type of questions that when we started finalizing, it was realized that this board hadn't necessarily given that direction.
So as I hear it, they're looking for, go ahead.
Again,
Commissioner
I
Gonzalez.
did not think the intent was to spend $1 million on such a project, however.
Okay, but it's $1 million spread out over, all the different projects. Go
Let me
ahead.
ask this, since most of it's would be allocated city and county. Jennifer and Gail, how much money do you need to get done these reasonable estimates and a beginning design?
We actually believe that the amount that's currently available in the fund exceeds what we would need. So we do, at least from the city's perspective, I don't think we would spend the whole $700 and some thousand that would be available for this activity. For each of these projects, they roughly range, I think you put in your memo, Rick, about 20 or 35,000 feet. Some of them are a little smaller, some of them are a little larger as we go through and we begin these design efforts and get the cost estimate.
I would concur. I mean, what we're trying to do is narrow down some of our projects and project lists so that, anything that we're doing some design on are likely projects for the Pprta ballot. And so that's an effort that we're going through right now. And again, our goal is to minimize the amount of funds that are spent on this effort and to make sure that we're good stewards of the dollars from Pprta that are made available.
Okay, so how about this as a motion to allocate half of that available reserve for design at this stage, and then if the entities come back up to half, and then if the entities don't think that's enough, they can come back to us for an additional funding of it. Does that sound reasonable to folks? Seeing at least a couple head nods.
Yeah. Anybody, any other board member out there? Yolanda, go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I'm having trouble too with the one, it's 1,300,000, right? It's not like 1 million.
It's $1 million.
Exactly $1 million.
$1,028,000,
$1,028,000. Okay.
unless someone knows something different.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so.
Bev gave the thumbs up on that.
Okay, good. Yeah, but I am having a lot of trouble reconciling, giving all these over to a design firm, as I'm understanding it. I guess I was first here, we had this conversation and Wayne was talking about it. I was like, yeah, it does make sense to validate, what will the cost be? We don't want to be paying way over budget. But I think now we're in a different time and people are looking at every cost that could come up and looking at inflation and looking at supply chains and looking all of that. But so exactly how much money do we have in the reserves that we're going to use part of that? So what do we have in the reserves? And what part of it? Is it 100,000, 200,000? What is that?
Can it, yeah, Bev, come on up.
If the question is the reserve for engineering cost estimates, it's $1,027,968, if that's the question.
And it was carried over since 2019, like a little bit every year. Well, more than a little bit, but it accumulated to the $1,027,968. And then this year for 2022, we're budgeting for the ballot measure expenditures versus this line item. So this has been set aside to that extent.
Okay, but are there different reserve accounts?
Yes.
Yes, we have a 10% reserve, 3% for Tabor, and 7% for the board designated reserve. And we carry that over from year to year. The board designated reserve can be utilized if there's something that is very unexpected. And the intention is to be paid back the next year. So then at the end of not to get into the weeds, but at the end of this capital 10 years, that amount goes back into the capital projects from that 10 years. So, because it consists of revenue that was earned during those 10 years.
And what's our cash on hand right now, Bev?
It's over 200 million.
Okay.
So we're not
200 million.
I'm trying to work through this in my head. So again, like if we use from the reserves, how much? And now I'm asking, are we going to have to pay it back? And it will be up to the different entities that make up the Pprta to refund that. money.
So the board designated reserve is a different amount or a different portion of the budget, and we haven't used any of that. This was specifically set aside for the engineering estimates, and it consisted of the amount of, from 2019 through 2021, the amount of the budget and admin that we didn't utilize.
Yes, Director Williams.
So because we work on a get the money first, then build the project, we have a very large cash reserve at the present time of $200 million, roughly. And that's because all of those projects that are out there, we have the funds to pay. And so that's the way we made the decision. We weren't going to do debt financing. We weren't going to do anything. We were going to do cash financing. And that means we have the cash on hand before we do it. Part of that 200 million is we've been setting aside a little bit for the last couple budget years to say, let's do some design. So to move us forward, and I'm not trying to cut off debate, but just so we have a motion, I will move that we allocate, and I'm going to go with a simple round number. I know there's 1,027,000 and change, but allocate 500,000 to the entities up to that number with the proportionate shares of population. And if entities come back and say, hey, we can't get all the design work done that we need to, then they can come back to the board and say, we need some more. But that's my motion, is to allocate 500,000.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Commissioner Williams, I'll second.
We have a second. Let's have further discussion. Do I hear any further discussion on the motion?
This is Commissioner Williams. So I considered this a lot like our, I know the contracts Gail mentioned, and the 24-hour people we have to come out and fix things that are kind of on call or on-call contracts. And so I do think it's certainly probably a good investment of funds to figure out how much these projects might even go so that we can, you know, be as accurate on this ballot issue as we can. We know we're going to have, you know, probably from 2025 to whenever another recession at some point in our lifetimes. So we would just want to get as close as we can. And with right now, with so much building and so much work out there, I think it's a good chance to just work on getting the good estimates. That's it.
Yolanda, I do too. I mean, I really, when you were bringing it up initially, Wayne, I did think, well, we should be as close to budget as possible and try to figure out even the unforeseen things that are happening. I'm just, I guess I'm just not understanding this process in my head. And I know you want to move things along, but just not really understanding it. So when you first brought it up about the administrative money, as Bev was saying, I was like, well, that made sense. But I'm just, it hasn't all gelled for me. So I feel really uncomfortable voting on something that I don't have a clear understanding on.
Go ahead, Director Williams.
If I might, normally we do the design money in the capital budgets. And that's part of the capital projects that we approve. And as we look at the budget for a project, we will see some capital. The first thing that takes place is some design, then some right of way, and then you ultimately get to construction. And so it's done in phases. But to use capital money for it, it has to be in the approved list of capital projects. None of, unless some B projects show up, but the A list, none of the capital projects that we're talking about for RTA 3 are in the approved list of A list capital projects. So we can't begin to use that capital money for it, but we can use the administrative money for it. And that is by the ballot issue, no more than 1%. And so the reason the push and the reserves have been set up for this specific purpose was for the design so that we can get decent cost estimates. Again, normally, if we followed Pikes Peak RTA 2, we'd wait till we got to the project, then we begin to use design money out of the capital list, but we can't do that because of the prohibition. For the capital project money can only go to the capital projects, but that 1% administration does allow us to do some preliminary design for the projects, and that preliminary design will provide us with some cost estimates. The reason it's important to do that, I believe, before the ballot issue is if we're telling people these are the projects we're going to build, we have to have some relative concept of how much they're going to cost. And while there's always been some give and take in the actual cost of a project, knowing what those, that, you know, when you say widen Mark Shuffle Road, is that a $5 million line? Is that a $30 million line in that budget? When we say, you know, reconstruct Academy Boulevard or Circle bridges, how much is that? And so those are costs that if we begin that design now, it will save us money in the capital side in RTA 3.
Okay, I think I got it. So,
Okay.
but we're going to begin the design on all the projects that we plan on doing in capital.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Jim.
May I ask a clarification, Wayne, on you mentioned when we're telling people roughly how much this cost and what the projects, all the projects we're going to put forward in RTA 3, what they would cost. Isn't it important to also say that the current cost estimate is for a 2% design or a 10% design versus them coming back and saying, well, look how much overrun it was?
Yeah.
Well,
You're correct, Jim, that these are estimates, and that's one of the things that I think the memo was clear on, is that these are estimates, and we are not guaranteeing there's no landfill underneath there. Like, I think that's Centennial's extension that had the landfill. Colorado had the tire dump. Not until you start digging in some cases. I mean, we don't know what's there in some cases till we start digging. So no, it is not you are locked into this price, but to the extent we can, I think it increases the credibility the better and closer we are, but there are certainly going to be unforeseen things that happen.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to give direction to everyone. And my only question is, do we do a voice vote and then see who votes nay on that, and then document it that way? So I think we will do it that way too. So all in favor of this motion, state aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Wow, I hear none. I'm surprised. So that motion, Jennifer, that motion has been approved.
Thank you for listening to the
Yeah.
CAC's comments. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, Jim. You bet. And Rev. Okay, that moves us to 9 Charlie. Reappointment process for Citizen Advisory Committee members. Yes, Rick.
Excuse me, as the board recalls, the CAC appointments are on a staggered basis, with approximately a third of the CAC members come up each year for either appointment or reappointment as of December 31. And in your memo, there are 6 CAC members who need to decide if they want to seek reappointment. Karen asked the CTAB, David Zelenak from HAC, and Reb representing Green Mountain Falls. They would need to request reappointment from their respective member governments. However, the at-large regular and at-large alternate positions, Tom Viersba, Jim Moore, Jim Godfrey, would need to seek a reappointment from the board. However, Tom Viersba is term limited as an at-large regular CAC member. But as you recall from earlier on your agenda, we now have 2 openings because we have 2 resignations. So other than this being a portion of this being an info item, the action item I'm requesting is with the 2 openings on the at-large CAC seats of the turnover of Jean Bray and David Chestnut. I'm requesting the board to direct me to advertise for at-large seats on the CAC and bring those back. The board's policy is that once I get those responses, those applications, then I bring them to the board subcommittee that first looks at applications for at-large regular and at-large alternates, and that's the board chair, board's vice chair, and the CAC chair. So I'll set up a schedule for if you so direct me to advertise, and then take those candidates to the subcommittee of the chair, vice chair, and the CAC chair, and then they can make their recommendation back to the full board either in December or January.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we need a motion to advertise the at-large seats on the CAC, and the other piece as Rick described. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Director Wayne Williams and a second from Director Gonzalez. Discussion. Anything out there online? Discussion? I hear none. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. Rick, there you go.
Okay,
Have at it.
thank you.
Just laugh at having this exchange with Godfrey. He's chair, so I figured he was a full member, but I guess he's an alternate, so he doesn't get to vote some of the time.
Okay, that takes care of the things that are approved and accepted. So 9 Delta staff field review report.
Just information. I'd be glad to take any questions you might have. This is just my quarterly drive around to confirm the work that the member governments have reported that they've done in that quarter.
Any comments, discussion, questions? I hear none. We will move on to item 10. All right,
Yeah, and
Jennifer, yeah, go ahead.
my recommendation, unless any of the board members feel it's necessary for an executive session, that we do not need this item today.
Anyone? Yolanda, Commissioner Williams out there in Zoom land? Nope.
I'm good.
Okay. Item 11 is, so we don't have to vote on that.
Nope, so 10, we're just skipping number
Yep.
10
Got
as unneeded, and then I can just move on to 11,
Yes,
which is the
please.
same topic.
Yes.
An update since our last meeting. Mr. Gunning and Chair did testify at the September 24th public hearing that was down here in El Paso County, and presented sort of the main 4 points that the PPRT is concerned about with the greenhouse gas rulemaking. So I guess I would turn it over to the two of you if you wanted to make any comments about that public hearing. I was actually on vacation, so I did not attend remotely or otherwise.
Yeah, for both Andy and I were there, as well as Rick and others that were there at the hearing. I thought it went very, very well. We were able to express the importance of our comments towards the greenhouse gas issues. And as with most of those hearings, they didn't have any questions for us or anything. Over to Andy. And then I would like Jennifer to comment on what we think is going to happen in the future.
Yeah, not much more to add. I think they're listening. We hope they're listening. We'll find out if draft rules come out and what the final version looks like. But yeah, I think between the points we're making on the PPRTA and PPACG side, I think we're being pretty specific and constructive. So we'll see what happens.
I will comment on the one gentleman, was he from Boulder, that said we should never have any more fossil fuel automobiles. Yes. Yeah. Yes, he did. So that made my Friday. Go ahead, Jennifer.
So next steps, I think as everyone knows, the deadline for public comments is actually October 15th, so this Friday. We were sort of waiting until today's meeting to see if they were going to release any revised rules, which they have not. I checked again right before this meeting, so there has not been any study of revised rules.
The State Transportation Commission meets next week. So if a revision comes out or extended public comment period comes out, we'll probably know by this time next week.
Right. What I'm saying is none had been released to date, which was a possibility that there could have been some revisions along the way. We didn't want to make our formal written comments until we knew whether or not there were going to be any revised rules during this current rulemaking process. So as Andy said, they're meeting next week to decide if there's going to be revised rules and extended public comment period. So today, what I have before you, and I have copies if anyone wants a hard copy, but I did send it out to you all electronically last Thursday as well, is a draft letter. This looks similar to the draft letter we discussed last month's meeting in executive session before we sort of knew where we stood. But so this draft letter is just refined a bit, adds some commentary. While obviously we think that the rulemaking is an important process, that it just doesn't take into consideration that some transportation projects might actually help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It doesn't really take that into account. It articulates our main points, which we discussed at last month's meeting, and were the main points that Chair Helms took to the verbal public comment period. And the only other thing I did want to note, and I noted that in the transmittal I sent to you last week as well, was that one of the FAQs that is listed online does actually address how the rules impact regional transportation authority projects. And of note in that is that it says this does not give the Transportation Commission the authority to prevent a locally funded project from happening. So it's recognizing that, you know, while it may logistically prevent that project from happening, they don't have power over the RTA. They're exercising power through the MPOs. So I also added language to the letter, just addressing the fact that while they are recognizing that they can't stop the RTA from doing a project, that doesn't really take into consideration the fact that the RTA is made up of a bunch of members who are also members of the MPO and rely on funding from the MPO to do the project. So it's kind of a catch-22. So I'm happy to go over the letter in any detail or distribute copies of it, but the direction we'd be looking for today would be to authorize staff to finalize this letter, put it on letterhead, sign, and I guess I will leave the logistics of signing to Rick and Mr. Helms, Councilmember Helms, and then submit this by the Friday deadline.
This Friday.
Yep.
Yep. So that's the timeline we're on, this Friday.
And this is Commissioner Williams. The letter is very well written, and I would be in support of a motion to that effect that we submit this letter by Friday so that we can get our comments in, and hopefully they'll change up some of these processes to make the whole greenhouse gas rulemaking a little simpler.
Thank you for the motion, Commissioner Williams.
Second.
And we have a
Gonzalez.
second by Commissioner Gonzalez. Further discussion? I hear none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
I
opposed? I hear none. The motion has passed. The letter will go out. Okay. All right. With that said, that was item number 11. Item 12, PPRTA member announcements. We'll go around the room and start with Commissioner Geithner.
I don't have any announcements to speak of. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Nothing.
Nothing.
Mayor? No. Director Williams.
Ballots are out. Please exercise your right to vote. And in order to keep costs down in terms of overtime, if turning your ballots other than at the last minute where practicable, there's important city and county and Manitou Springs issues as well as other places. And there's also a host of school board races that are pretty critical. So, and Fountain, but they're not a member of us. So, you know, we don't, that's why I skipped them over. But wherever you are in the community, please cast your ballot. Thanks.
All right. Mayor Graham.
No.
All right, online. Let's go, Councilmember Avila.
Ditto Wayne, what he said about cast your ballot and no other updates.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes, so best of luck to Calhan in their vote. And on that note, if Commissioner or if Wayne and Andy and Randy and Carrie have time to meet just after concerning the Calhan matter. Thanks.
Okay, and
Not with me, so.
sure. Let's see, who else? Green Mountain Falls. Don't see that. So it's over to me. I wanted to introduce Roland. Roland, would you come up from Calhan? So come up and introduce yourself here at the mic. And I think is the, there you go. Perfect.
I'm Roland Gardine. I'm Mayor Pro Tem of Calhan. Okay, they asked me to come down here and talk to you guys about then this ballot issue. How we can actually get communication out to the community, that kind of stuff. But right now, we're all just kind of feeling out what, where, and why of the different organizations. And so far, what I saw today is pretty organized and pretty focused. I think it's kind of cool.
Oh, I'm gonna put you on the spot and say, are there any questions for Roland? Yes. Yolanda, did you have anything?
No, good luck.
Yeah.
if you have any extra money, we love to have point of interest.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'll reach out then to anybody else up at the table. Have any further comments out in the audience? Any further comments? Okay. Wow. With that, I make a motion, excuse me, I asked for a motion to adjourn. Okay, that was Commissioner Gonzalez and Mayor Carpenter, seconded. And with that, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none. We are adjourned. Yeah, I'm working on it. Corey, Michael Malley called me, I think it was Sunday night. He said you had texted me or something. No, I did not get it. So, yeah, I did not